Hey guys and gals, friends of YouTube, welcome back to part 3 of building the Edge 540. Today we're going to be working on the fuselage, putting the tail feathers on and the landing gear probably in this segment. We'll try to get all that in there. Maybe some servos or something, but I'm still waiting on my engine mount, so as soon as that gets in, that will probably be part 4. We'll probably do the engine then, and I know some of you guys are really wanting to see how to mount that and drill your hose and center it up and everything, so hopefully we'll get that on part 4. Just a short note, our club, we are the RC High Flyers in Alpena, Arkansas, and in my intro you probably saw in memory of Jimmy Jones. We just found out a couple days ago that Jimmy is the guy I leased the field from, where our flying field is. He passed away back in February, and nobody told me. I had no idea. I mean, everybody in the country knows him down there, and I just can't believe somebody at the restaurant or around there didn't tell me that he had died. I would have went to his funeral, but Jimmy was a great guy. He was always very kind to us and kind enough to lease us that area to put our landing strip in, and we're going to dedicate our videos to him. He loved to come, and he'd sit for hours down there in his truck and watch us fly. And I think we're gonna put a memorial up there and probably try to name our field the Jimmy Jones Memorial Flying Field. So anyway, that's what that's all about. Just so you know, it wasn't any of our flyers that's gone, but the gentleman that owned the property has passed on. So his wife is still going to lease us the property without any problem. So we'll still be there. But anyway, let's get on to building this plane. See what we can get done on it. Okay, we're gonna start off with the tail feathers, and basically we're doing the same thing we did to the ailerons on the main wing. We're gluing our hinges in. So let's go ahead and get that done and get these all glued into place, and we'll do the same thing. Mark our center line on each one, and put our T-pins in there. Go ahead and do that. And then, let's see, let's get both sides out here. Mark our center line. Okay. Try to keep from sticking a pin in my finger. Okay. Now, let's stick these back in here. Push it up to the pin. Come on, there we go. Now, we'll put this side on. Start at one end like we did on the aileron. Work those hinges in the little slots. Oops, get this one started. There we go. Now let's push them all the way up. Now one thing we want to make sure of is we have just enough gap for that to clear. It doesn't touch out here on the end. About 2 millimeters. That's all we need on that. So let's put this end together. Push it up to the pin. Alright, one more. Okay, I'm going to put this side on. Start with this outside one. Start it. The middle one. And the end. Come on, get in there. There we go. Alright, now we want to push this up to about the same amount of gap as we have on the other end. Just about 2 millimeters is all we need there. Alright. Now we can pull our pins out. Carefully lay them over here. And let's take our super glue, wick that 3 or 4 drops into each one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Same thing here. You want these pushed in. You don't want a big gap air to get through. It'll cause your control surface to flutter real bad. Alright, wiggle those a little bit. Let's turn it over. Do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now move those just a little. Let that wick down inside there. Alright, there's our stab all put together. Alright, next we will do the rudder. Now on this one, let's mark them right quick. Put a pin in it. That in there. Come on, get in the hole. There we go. Put a pin in this one. Virgil, this part, my friend Virgil gave me this plane. This part's for you, buddy. You won't. Your plane is already assembled as far as this goes, so this really won't pertain to you. But when I come to some of the other stuff, I'll try to be sure and really go over it good for you. Alright, those in there. When our stripes to line up, you want just enough gap, about 2 millimeters, so the rudder will turn without contacting the stab. And that clears. So let's pull our pins out. Put a little on this side. Okay, turn it over. A little on that side. Alright, this bottom one, we are going to leave it. Of course, that slides into the back of the fuselage on the tail end of it when we get ready to put this on. So we don't do anything to this hinge at this time. We'll wait and glue it when we put it on there. So, alright, got those two halves ready. Now what we have to do, lay these up here. Again, Virgil, this is already done on your plane, so you don't have to worry about it. But okay, let me back. I had to put a new blade on my hobby knife. Now, where the stab goes in, we have to cut the material away on that. So let's find the end of the hole here. Just really gently cut this out. Go back that way. There we go. You can keep that little piece for patching a little stripe or something if you need to, pinhole or whatever. Now let's turn it over and get the other side. I like to put a brand new blade on when I'm cutting this out so it doesn't catch and try to tear my covering while I'm doing this. Up here. Okay, those two pieces. Alright, that looks good. Now, one other thing we've got to do is cut out the hole for the servos back here. So, here's one of them. Just follow the line of the hole. Okay, there's one cut out. This will be an elevator servo on this side. On this side we'll have an elevator and a rudder. The rudder will be this back one, the elevator back down here. So I was going to put a pull-pull system in this off a single real heavy duty servo on the rudder, but I decided to go ahead and mount them back here in the back because of the weight issue, the little bit heavier motor, and then I'm having to pull the motor frontward, forward a little bit, 10 or 12 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and mount them back here. This is actually a really good way anyway, because the linkage is shorter, and a little bit stouter and doesn't bind on you. Okay. Alright, those cut out. Alright, let's see now. Alright, first thing we got to do, well, here, we've got to measure. I need a bigger ruler. Let's get this one. I need to measure from each end. Get the center of this. Get a marker out here. Let's do our inch right there. It is 20 3/8. So I need to go 10 1/2 3/8 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 16ths. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3/16. So I need to go 10 3/16, which would be 1, 2, 3. Be right there. Okay, let's measure the back end of it. Should be the same. 10 3/16. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And we've got a center line, and I marked it on the very back so I can see it from behind, because once we stick this inside there you won't be able to see this. Maybe just a little bit down through the slot there. But now we want to pre-fit all this. Slide it up in there, keeping your little center marks centered up. I can see the front one down through this groove where the vertical fin goes. You can see it up in there. So that should be its center, so it should measure out. Now what we're going to do before we put any glue, we're going to make sure this is all fitted very well, correctly. So we're going to measure from this out to the tip of the stab itself. I've got 9 3/4. Oh, wait a minute, something ain't right. No, 9 1/4. I'm sorry, I looked at it wrong. 9 1/4. And I have just almost a little over 9, so it needs to go to the right, just a hair. All right. 9 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 16ths. 9 5 16ths. All right, that's perfectly centered. Let's check the back now. That's 9 5. Let's see. 5/8. 9 5/8. 9 5/8. So it's perfectly centered. Okay. Now what we want to do is measure. You can measure from the tip of your main wing when you put them on, but I just measure from right up there where the cowl butts in, put it right in that corner. And we have got 34 1/8. 34 1/8. So we're good right there. Now what we're going to do, since we have it measured and marked, or not marked, we got it measured and centered. This is it's actually a pen for material. My wife gave it to me for sewing, but it comes off. So we're going to mark our covering on here, top and bottom. Okay. Now I'm going to do something, so I know I'm going to take a big T-pen, and right here at the tail end I'm going to put a little hole in the covering. And I don't know if you guys will be able to see this or not, but I'm putting the pin right straight down beside the fuselage, and I'm putting a little pinhole in this covering. I don't know if it'll show up on this camera or not, but I put a little pinhole here and up here. And the reason I'm doing that is that way when I slide this back in here, I can center it up by those holes and know that it's perfect, and then I'll remeasure it too. I'll use 30-minute epoxy so the glue won't set. Now slide it straight back out so you don't wipe off your marks. Now you can barely see them on there, both sides. Now you want to take your razor knife and do not cut very deep at all, but cut about 1/8 of an inch inside this mark. Just barely score the covering. You don't want to cut deep into the wood because you'll weaken the structure. So just barely score the covering. You can do this with a soldering iron tip too, but I just always do it with this. Same thing on the back and front. Leave about 1/8 of an inch covering. Okay, we got that cut. Now let's stick our knife tip under there. Pull that piece off. There we go. Put that top part down, and we're going to do the bottom. The reason we're doing this is so the glue will bond very tightly to the wood inside this groove here. You can't put the glue just on top of the covering. If your covering comes loose or shifts, then your whole thing comes loose. So always trim this back so you have wood to wood when you glue. Okay, let's get this piece pulled up. There we go. Now, I still have my little pin marks that I made with my straight pin in the covering, so I can tell when I slide it back in there I can get it perfectly lined up. So at this point on this one, we're ready to put the glue in. I want to get one other thing here. Let me find it. Can't remember where it was. This big box. Hang on. Well, just a minute, let me go look over here. Okay, I have a little spacer block. If you notice, the stab goes way up in here, it leaves a gap back here. So what this is for is this will slide in right behind the stab and fill in that gap, and it should fit perfect to close all that gap up. So that being said, we want to do the same thing on the top of it, on the top and the bottom. We want to cut just let me get my good knife here, get the camera back down here we can see it. We want to cut just a couple millimeters inside the edge, close to 1/8 of an inch there. Okay, you got that side. Just pull the covering up, get the end of it loose and pull that off. Same thing here, we want the glue to bond wood to wood inside here. Now let's do this side. Okay. Alright, now we've got our little block ready to go when we mix our glue. Okay, I've got all this ready. I'm going to, well, actually, let's see, I'm going to do this. Let's put this in here. I can do this in 2 steps, but I can also do it in 1 step. Let me get my little pinholes lined up. Perfect. Now, let's take this hinge, this CA hinge, let's take it out for right now. All we're going to do is test fit this stab in here. Okay. Better put my little block in here too, just to make sure it goes all the way up. Okay. Put that in there. Square that up good. Now let's try the stab. Get the camera up here where you can see what I'm doing. Okay, we're going to test fit the stab. Or not the stab, I'm sorry. The vertical fan. I don't know my parts very well, do I? Okay. Now, that in place, we're going to hold it, do the same thing. We're going to mark it on both sides. Okay. Now we'll take that out and we'll do the same thing. We'll cut this about 1/8 of an inch shy of our mark so the covering goes down in that groove. Again, don't score it very deep, just a very gentle with a brand new blade, and it'll cut right through that covering. So now get it under here. Get started peeling up. It's glued down, but it'll pull loose pretty easy. Okay, let's get that loose. Now we want it off the bottom too, because the bottom of this will probably touch in there. So let's cut this side about 1/8 inch under our line. 1/8 inch right there. Here, started pulling up. Now, should I'll have to cut it across here. Okay, come on. There we go. Got it peeled off the bottom there. Now let's get it on this end. There we go. Got that all bare. Ready to glue down. Okay. Now, we want to mark our center line on this hinge. We want to put a pin in it. Well, it's a tough one there. Either that or I got a dull pin. Okay. There we go. Now let's stick it back in there. And we're going to test fit this again to make sure it fits in the fuselage, because we got to cut a little groove where this goes right here. The groove's in there, we just have to widen it out a little bit. There we go. Take the knife. Now, let's test fit this with that in place. Oops, I didn't go quite tall enough. Let me go up a little bit more. Okay, here we go. Stand there. Get it started in the hole. There we go. Okay, it's in. Fits in our groove. Always test fit everything before you put glue on this stuff, because you'll be sorry if you don't. And then when we get this glued in place, we're also going to take our square and we're going to measure against the stab and the vertical to see if it's straight up and down. Looks like the stab is sagging just a hair on this right side. So here's what I'm going to do. Take my blocks out. I'm going to get my sanding block out. I like this Great Plains because the way the handle's got this edge on it. I'm going to turn this upside down. I'm going to sand the top part on this side, just a little. Okay, I'm going to sand the bottom part on this side. Doesn't take much usually. Now, I'm going to put this back in here again. Get our holes lined up. Okay. It looks pretty good. Let's put this back. Don't worry about our little block right now. And we'll tape this in place if we need to torque it one little way or another. Okay. That is looking good right there. Alright, we're good to go. Got everything pre-fitted, sanded, ready to mix our glue. So let's take all this out. Since this wants to come out of there, let's put it in the fuselage part and leave it. And the reason you don't want to glue half of it right now is because the glue will wick to this end and stiffen it up. So you want to wait till you put the other on there and then wick the glue in it. Okay, I'm going to get some paper towels ready, some denatured alcohol to wipe off my excess, and then we'll mix up some epoxy, and I'll be right back when we glue this in. Okay, we've got our epoxy mixed up. I've coated both sides of the wood on the stab, coated inside where the stab goes. You're going to have a lot of runoff on this. That's just the way it works. So we're going to slide that up in there. And get our little pinholes lined up. Okay, now let's get a couple of paper towels and fold them up a little square. Spray the edge of it. I'm going to do the bottom first, right along the seam, just any of the excess glue that comes off of there. Then you can fold your towel over, use the other side. Let's get this side of the bottom. Quite a bit running over here. Be sure and get all that off because it really makes a mess. Okay, now got some back here on the tails running down on my CA hinge even. Get that off. Okay, now let's get this back in here. The epoxy won't hurt it. Okay, now let's do the top. This side. This will also takes your glue off, but it also takes the mark that you made off of that pin that I used. Now I'm going to fold that back over the opposite direction. And we'll do this side. Okay. Alright, that's good and clean. Now we're gonna make sure our little pinholes are lined up, and then that should be where we need it. We're gonna measure right quick. Plenty of time. 34 1/4. And 34. We're off somewhere. Let me roll this that way just a little. Okay. Should be about 34 1/8. There we go. Alright. That's good. Now, find my wooden ruler. We are 9 5/8. 9 5/8. We're perfect. Okay. That's good. Now, let's get the little block. Put a little bit of glue on it. Both sides. This has got to be the stinkingest stuff. Whew. Alright, now we're going to stick that up in there. We're going to push it in till it's flush with the back and the sides. Now I got to get a paper towel. I'm getting glue on my fingers. Okay. Now let's get that off. Fold it over again. Get the other side. Get the back of it. Now, okay, got her centered up. Holes are still showing, I didn't move that. Okay, now, let me clean my hands off one more time. I got epoxy on here. I don't want to get sticky spots all over my plane. I'll get a couple more towels. Alright, now we are ready to do the stab. Let's slide that forward just a little. Get our glue. Still got plenty of time before it sets up. Okay. Smear that on there. Just a nice even layered and a bit thick. Get the bottom of it. Not sure if it's going to touch the bottom in there or not, but if it does, we want glue on it. Okay. Other side. Okay. Alright, let's get that out of the way. Now, we are going to start that down in there a little ways back so we can get our hinge in the groove back here. Alright, we're in. Now, not much glue on this side, but the other side's got a bunch. Okay, let's wipe that off. Hold on to the tail. Now here's a little tricky part. I got to get in between it here to get this off. Not real sure how to get down in there. I'm going to pull this back out a minute and get in there and get that blob that's on there. Now I got my hinge out of alignment. Let's restart that. There we go. It's going crooked. Come on now. Need to scoot it down a little. Well, my hinge is wanting to rotate on me. Just want to bring it back here and slide it in straight. There we go. Alright, let's get rid of that. Get that off of there. Roll it back over this way. Pull that pin out of there before it gets glued in there. Alright, we've got the stab all the way down in the end. Now I'm going to take my CA, if I can figure out what I did with, here it is. And we'll glue this hinge back here. It'll set instantly, so that'll also help hold the tail section in place. Alright, is that going to square? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to tip it up here. 3 or 4 drops on each side. Put that off of there. Okay. Now, before everything starts to set, let me get my glue put up and we'll remeasure, make sure everything's where it's supposed to be. Glue off my hands. get it on the plane anywhere. Well, it dries and you don't see it, and then later on there's a big smudge there, man. It really makes you mad. So, it looks pretty clean. I see one little spot I gotta get. You fold this up. Okay. Don't look like any on this side. Alright, we're good to go. Now, let's measure this one more time, make sure I haven't moved it. 34 1/8. 34 1/8. We're right on the money. Okay. Everything looks squared. Let me get my square up here. Okay. Looking good. We're there. Everything's glued. Now all we gotta do is just let that set for half hour minimum. It's a 30-minute epoxy. It'll set good enough in a half hour you can handle it and work with it, and then after that, overnight it'll harden all the way. So anyway, there's the tail feathers glued in. Of course, we got to put the linkage in the control horns and stuff. We'll do that after it sets good. So we'll be back with the next section.